Are you looking for some sneaky sleeper plays, some boomer bust plays to help you navigate week 11 of your fantasy football season? Maybe surprise some friends with some players that they didn't even realize were on the fantasy radar? Well, make sure you stay right here and watch RotoBallers, sleepers, streamers, and boom plays for week 11 of your fantasy football season. I'm Anthony Aniano, happy to be with you here today as we take a look at some players flying under the radar. Maybe some high upside boom options that you can utilize for your fantasy football team for week 11. Don't forget, guys, Atlanta, Indianapolis, New England Patriots, and the New Orleans Saints all on a bye for week 11. We deal with injuries as we always do each and every week as we get closer and closer to our fantasy playoffs. So let's start at the quarterback position. A couple of sleepers, streamers, and boom plays. Sam Howell of the Washington Commanders. A fantastic matchup against the dismal New York Giants. New York Giants allow 250.1 passing yards per game and allow 20.3 points per game to the quarterback position. That is a Giant defense that never leaves the field. It's always on the field. It's the worst offense in the NFL. Right now, actually, the Giants offense is the 10th worst offense in points per game in NFL history. They're going to be on the field all day, I think, against the Washington Commanders as well. Sam Howell with Terry McLaurin, Curtis Samuel, if he plays, Jahan Dotson, all out there, Logan Thomas, and Brian Robinson, all could be in line for a big matchup. The Giants have allowed 13 passing touchdowns already this season, and yet there's Howell averaging over 20 points per game in DraftKings formats. Howell in 6-point per touchdown formats is currently the third leading quarterback scorer in fantasy football. He shouldn't be a sleeper. He shouldn't be a streamer. He shouldn't be a boom play. He should be a must play. But some people still have him on their bench. This is a terrific week to get him in your lineup. Another quarterback to be mindful of, definitely more of a sleeper, streamer, and boom play, but that's Jordan Love of the Green Bay Packers. Love averaging 17.8 fantasy points per game, but he goes against the Chargers defense that we know you can throw the ball against. The Chargers allow 315.7 passing yards per game and an astounding 25.8 points per game to the quarterback position. They've allowed 14 passing touchdowns already this season. At the running back position, take a look at Tai Chandler of the Minnesota Vikings. Alexander Mattison concussion, listed as questionable, didn't practice Wednesday. We'll see what happens as the week goes along. But if Mattison is out, and the trend all season has been, with a concussion, most players have been missing one game. Tai Chandler is next in line for the Minnesota Vikings. Last week, he went 15 carries, 45 yards, and a touchdown, finishing with over 10 fantasy points for the Vikings coming in for Madison. We know Cam Akers is already out. Minnesota goes against the Denver Bronco defense that allows 158.3 rushing yards per game. And although overall they have played better, last week against the Buffalo Bills, the Denver Broncos defense allowed a combination of Latavius Murray and James Cook to go 21 carries and 177 yards with one rushing touchdown. They allow 32.9 PPR points a game to opposing running backs, does that Denver defense, and they've allowed a total of 13 running back touchdowns, 9 on the ground and 4 through the air. Another option and an even deeper sleeper at the running back position, Rico Dowdell of the Dallas Cowboys, who showed last week that he may very well be the more explosive running back in that Cowboys backfield. Now, I'm not saying that Tony Pollard is going to lose his job, but Pollard last week, 15 for 55, 3.7 yards per carry against the New York Giants, whereas Rico Dowdell comes in, and I understand it was late in the game, it was garbage time, but nonetheless, Rico Dowdell went 12 carries for 79 yards, 6.6 yards per carry, and did have a touchdown. And this is another smash matchup for that Cowboy offense. Last week they beat up on the Giants. This week they get the Carolina Panthers. It's like 2 bye weeks right now for the Dallas Cowboys. Carolina allows 131.9 rushing yards per game. They allow 29 PPR points per game to the running back position, with 15 total touchdowns allowed to opposing running backs. 12 rushing, and 3 on the ground. If you're looking for that deep sleeper, if you're beat up by bye weeks, maybe missing Bijan Robinson, Jonathan Taylor, Ramondre Stevenson, or Alvin Kamara, and are in desperate need, Rico Dowdell of the Dallas Cowboys should be involved in their offense this week against the Carolina Panthers. Now, at the wide receiver position, Courtland Sutton of the Minnesota Vikings. Maybe he's not a sleeper, but I just get the funny feeling he's kind of been off the radar this year. People ask me all the time, Anthony, am I playing Courtland Sutton? Here's a news flash, right? Courtland Sutton is up to 7 touchdowns now on the season. He is Russell Wilson's favorite target. He's got 23 targets in his last 3 games. And the Denver Broncos go up against the Minnesota Vikings team that has allowed 13 passing touchdowns this season, 9 of which are to opposing wide receivers. They are in the top 10 in allowing points to opposing wide receivers, allowing 37.8 PPR points to the wide receiver position. My second wide receiver to be mindful of, Rashee Rice of the Kansas City Chiefs, who's averaging 10.4 fantasy points per game. Now, you say in your head, you go, Anthony, wait a minute. Monday night, Kansas City Chiefs are playing the Philadelphia Eagles. Yes, absolutely. Philadelphia is the best defense in the league against the run. Isaiah Pacheco is a tough start this week against that defense that's only allowing about 65 rushing yards per game. However, Rashee Rice is going against an Eagles defense that allows the most fantasy points in the league to opposing wide receivers. They allow 47.1 points to wide receivers in PPR formats. And they are tied for allowing the most touchdowns to opposing wide receivers with 14 on the season. Rashee Rice is averaging 10.4 points per game. He's got 4 touchdowns on the season, and he's got 10 or more fantasy points in 5 of his last 7 games. Other than Travis Kelce, Rice is the most consistent wide receiver right now on that Kansas City team, and he's going against the secondary that allows wide receivers to score fantasy points. Now, at the tight end position, Trey McBride of the Arizona Cardinals. Forget about him being a sleeper, streamer, or boom play. Trey McBride is a must-start week in and week out, and he's got a great matchup this week against the Houston Texans. He's got 20 or more fantasy points in 2 of his last 3. 24 points, I believe, was one of the games. Then in the middle, he had a down game, only 5.2 fantasy points, and then another one of about 24, 25 PPR fantasy points. This week, he goes against the Houston Texans that allows 16.2 PPR points a game to opposing tight ends, the most in the league, and they have allowed 4 touchdowns. Houston, a team on the rise, no doubt about it, but their defense struggles covering opposing tight ends. Thus, the reason why tight ends have more points against them than any other team in the league. 4 touchdowns to boot. Expect Trey McBride to be involved throughout the game. Second tight end to be mindful of, Luke Musgrave of the Green Bay Packers against the Los Angeles Chargers. Now, he hasn't been heavily involved. 4 targets per game, averaging 7.4 points per game in a PPR format. But Musgrave in Green Bay goes against that Charger defense, like I mentioned earlier, allowing almost 316 passing yards per game. And they've allowed 14 passing touchdowns. Of those 14 touchdowns, 3 of them have gone to opposing tight ends, and they allow the 3rd most points to opposing tight ends in PPR formats with 15.4 points per game allowed. So Musgrave, a deeper sleeper streamer option if you're looking for a Kyle Pitts, Jonnu Smith type of replacement. Okay, those are Taysom Hill with New Orleans if he's tight end eligible depending on your format. Okay, Luke Musgrave, a nice matchup to potentially step in and stream in your fantasy lineup. So to recap, our Week 11 sleepers, streamers, and boom plays: quarterbacks, Sam Howell and Jordan Love. Running backs, Tai Chandler and Rico Dowdell. At the wide receiver position, Courtland Sutton and Rashee Rice. And at the tight end position, Trey McBride and Luke Musgrave. Everybody, don't forget, head over to RotoBaller.com, sign up right now for their premium package. Use the promo code ACES at checkout and save. Like and subscribe right here to the RotoBaller YouTube channel. Download the RotoBaller app. It's free. All the sports you want, season long DFS format, right there in the palm of your hand. Give me a follow on Twitter at @Aniano Fantasy, and we will see you next time right here on RotoBaller Radio.